everyone. I am Urvita. I am the Advocacy and Outreach Manager at IDF. I welcome you all on behalf of India Diversity Forum. Thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule and joining us today for DNI Pe Charcha. Um, Before we begin today, I would like you to take you through the work that we do and sort of understand IDF as an organization. We strive towards bring equality at workplaces, addressing the inequality gap and discrimination at first on discrimination firsthand. The idea is to create awareness about creating a heterogeneous environment and for employees to be their authentic self. Our vision is to create a world free of discrimination and for India to become a beacon of diversity and inclusion for the rest of the world. We are the only body registered under Section 8 of Companies Act. Today, we have more than 660 plus corporate members across various sectors. And in order to have streamlined interactions, we have created 10 industry councils at macro level, namely BFSI, technology, consumer, make in India, well-being, infrastructure, hospitality, integrated mobility, communication, and services. Talking about our work, India Diversity Conclave is our flagship program. Apart from that, this year we have conducted a third edition in the month of April for India Diversity Conclave. We also organize seminars, workshops every month to bring members together. Our work here includes Diversity Conclave, Diversity Pe Charcha, Diversity Discuss, Des Rendezvous, Spotlight, Members Blog, etc. So that was about IDF. Today on the call, we have our moderator, Supriya Rehil, the D&I lead of Mahindra Logistics. We also have other member participants, Samta Lunga Jain, she's the Chief People Officer from Jewellex India, and Shashwat Mitra, the head HR from KPIT Techno. Over to you, Supriya.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Supriya Rehil and my pronouns are she and her. And I'm very happy to be moderating this wonderful panel and gladly looking forward to a very productive discussion with Shashwat and Dr. Samta. I think we all may already be aware, that in the current corporate landscape, there is a concerning trend that's emerged. Women leaders are leaving companies at a very high rate, than their male counterparts, and that poses a significant challenge to gender diversity and equality within organizations. According to the Women in the Workplace Report 2022 by leanin.org and McKinsey and Company, we are in the midst of a great breakup, quote unquote. So as the demand for gender equality grows, it's really time to take a closer look at why so many women are leaving leadership positions. And we need to understand the factors that are holding them back and we need to find ways to level the playing field. We've made progress, but despite progress, women continue to be underrepresented in leadership positions. The broken rung at the first step to the manager level, has been a long-standing barrier to women's advancement. So as a result, there are very few women, who do break through this barrier and get into leadership positions. And if they do get to leadership positions, they often face retention challenges as organizations struggle to keep this case women leaders. Shashwat, I want to bring you in. What do you think are the primary factors that contribute to the broken rung phenomenon? And in your experience, can you tell us about any effective strategies or initiatives that can break this broken rung pattern and we can promote gender diversity in leadership?
Okay, thank you so much. And once again, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking your time. This whole topic is something which is very close to me as an individual and also as a leader. The broken rung, what we continue to talk about, I want to break this into three parts. So the first is when we try and look at it from the current picture of where an organization stands, there seems to be a disparity. And we try to do something which is immediate in nature. The problem did not arise all of a sudden it took its own time and had formative years, which has given rise to where we stand today. So it can't be addressed in a flash of a moment. So I think that's the first thing which we need to acknowledge. That it's not something which will turn right over the period of a year or so. So that's the first part of it. The second part, I think, for every organization, it's an imperative, if not a mission, to lay down a long-term roadmap of what they would like to do to ensure that there is I'll not kind of quote it in terms of equal representation. Let me use the term desired representation into the leadership, and the strategies may vary. But when we say a long term, it really has to be a long term, but there has to be a respective milestone and see, are we really making a progress out there? So what I mean with this whole part is, let's say for an example from the manufacturing setup, where a representation is skewed versus an IT and FMCG and pharma for that matter, we should have probably as long as a 10 to 15-year roadmap, which says that this is how a representation of people in the respective board is going to move across. So this would even mean to have a representation just not at the entry to the management level, but it would also mean representation all the way up to the board part aspect. So that's the second. This whole thing is the second, but to have a long-term view and perspective. The third, in terms of some strategies or initiatives which could support, we landed up here, but we did, like I said with my first point, we didn't land it up to this situation all of a sudden. It kind of brewed over the period of time. So we need to support and offer extra incentive and support. Let me just call a psychological safe environment where every leader, for that matter, I will not segregate in terms of a gender. I would say every leader should have a psychological safe environment to really be there, thrive, and it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to accept the way you are. Now, many times these changes could be overwhelming. So the point, some of the strategies, maybe I will just highlight three. So the first is, while you are moving into this kind of a role, what are the kind of leadership development initiatives you are having to support through this transition? And when I'm saying leadership development, it's not the management of the role, it's management of self. Because many times it's not a challenge of what you could do, it's a self-doubt which you need to support and help come out of it. Second strategy would be, through these transitions, it could be overwhelming. So can we offer something in the form of a sabbatical or a part-time where you slowly get into those roles and then start thriving into those? Third, probably one of the other moments is a sponsorship right from the top. And every CXO needs to have, let's say, 2 or 3 people supported who are groomed, mentored, and supported through these transitions as you move across into joining that broken rung and making that movement to the next level. I think this is how I would like to spread across my overall response on these 3 points.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Samta, I want to bring you in here as well. I would also like your perspective on the broken run. The same question that I asked Shashwat. What is your view?
Okay, first of all, very good evening to all, and thank you, Shashwat, to give this lead to me, and thank you, Supriya. Interestingly, all the organization, and we are talking about this concept when we are already in Industry 5.0. So I presume that it is so much a neuropsychological concept which is rooted in our society. It is a cognition and cognitive bias that we hold, because that is the way we are brought up. Maybe the women today or women in the yesteryears also, they were trained to live in fear, to come out and through fear. So that gives a leeway to the concept of broken rung. But at the same time, what is happening that organizations don't have that resilience to build this with the sponge layer. So I would just say that the people on the top, it comes as a vision. It should percolate down. The vision also should not be vision alone. It should have sensibilities and sensitivities to all the future related aspirations that we have for gender equality or equity, whatever we call, so that every layer is bridged up. And I think the phenomena of Queen bee concept, the syndrome that the women also lives with, it also leads to many a times to this problem that people are not lifted up, and even the women in the organizations are not lifted up, because somewhere the women at the top don't allow the women from below to be lifted up. One, two, the cognitive bias of the people who are on top of the organization and they are male counterparts, they are living with this cognitive bias and they don't allow. And three, of course, the vision, the DI vision or the gender equity vision is not laid down too specific. Like taken a lead from Shashwat, it is an old age thing that we have been living with. So it will take some time. But that also tells us, and that also warrants us that we should build enough ecosystem to remove it and resolve it. So I think, yes, it is there. But nevertheless, all of us are fully geared. Good to have Shashwat on panel to hear the other side of the voice from the table. And as CPOs and CHROs, we are working towards it. That is one of the happy news.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Samta. And I'm glad that you brought the point on biases, which is exactly what I was going to ask in my next question. I don't know if you all have, sorry, if you all have read this book called Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. I'm still reading it. And, where she's talked about microaggressions and unconscious biases that women particularly face at the workplace. I mean, of course, it's not to say that men or other genders don't face, but, since we are focusing on women, I think I'm going to use the word women quite often in my communication here. So and I think somewhere as a woman, I can also personally attest to these experiences, where women are more likely to experience belittling microaggressions, such as having their judgment questioned or being mistaken for someone being more junior, or being controlled by their supervisors, interrupted or talked over in meetings, or sometimes even talked down to. Receiving less credit for their contributions, and certainly these biases reinforce traditional gender roles, that can hinder women's progress and advancement. Dr. Samta, in your view, and while you spoke about biases, I want to understand from you and get your perspective. Certainly, you did attest that these biases do exist. Maybe any examples from your own experience and some tangible insights that you could share as to how can we really go about addressing them at an organizational level. First, of course, is we do acknowledge that these biases exist, but how do we kind of address them at that level? Any thoughts from your side, Dr. Samta?
Such a nicely curated question, first of all. And I'm happy that we are leading this to microaggressions and cognitive biases. The reason is that all of us are born through and through in the patriarchal society. We are living with it. So though most of the parents today, they are actually bringing up their kids, daughters to be like sons. But I'm afraid, and it is deadly to see that none of us or majority of us don't have a courage to bring up their sons like daughters. So when we say this cognitive bias, it has already reached into us when we are growing up stage. And I feel that 50 years we are now when this term was coined by a Harvard professor. Still, we are talking about it, which tells us the pace and the speed at which we are working around it. 50 years is a long tenure. Having said that, in technology, we have really far-paced ourselves. We have had AI, artificial intelligence, but we are yet to have AI, appreciative inquiry for women. We have reached blockchain, but we are yet struggling with the blockchains in the minds for women. So interestingly, when we do a research, since I come from a manufacturing background and I'm heading a manufacturing setup, which is a global setup, and we understand that in a setup like this, wherein 45% of the women workforce are actually working in manufacturing, they may say, they may not say. They may talk about it, not talk about it. We have to pick the nuances of microaggressions and this conscious bias that is existing. And believe me, the approaches are so they cannot be uprooted so easily because they are so grooved in, and they have become a mental problem in the society, not in manufacturing or service industry to be precise, but to be precise in all the sectors. Even if we say we are talking on table stocks that yes, DEI, ESG, whatever we are talking, but yes, they are microaggressions which exist. Having said that, I would just recommend few strategies. First, at the organizational level, then at the HR level, and then for the individual people who are actually facing these issues. At organization level, we should try and propose, not only propose, but we should substantiate our proposal with strong action plan to eradicate these microaggressions by training people, sensitizing people, which is not enough, because we say a man of quality will always respect a woman for equality. So if a man of quality is not there, he will never appreciate and respect the woman for equality. So microaggressions, like people would say, oh, are you willing to go to interior of India? Will you be able to make a tour? So these are the microaggressions which are so subtle, yet it stick out. They stick their head out, they hurt you, they hurt your emotions, and more importantly, they have disarmed you, they have ungendered you, they have deterred you, because it is a form of, maybe I would say, harassment. If not harassment, then a deterrence. I would call it strong deterrence to the women empowerment also. So organizations should have a complete plan for over the years, not a short-term plan, not a living plan of the day, but a plan that lives for many years. Of course, organizations should have a very equitable promotional scheme patterns wherein people are promoted irrespective of their genders. They are promoted because of their competencies, because of their skills, because of their KSAs, rather than a speculative framework that is gender biased.
Right.
Coming to the HR front, I think HR is the custodian of the culture. And when we say HR is the custodian of the culture, it is not important to be bold enough, to be stern enough. You cannot have courage and comfort both. You have to choose one. So HR should be able to choose that strong things when these microaggressions or unconscious bias are seeded in, or when we can get some ripples of these which are impacting the organization, or more importantly, the women workforce, the women power of the organization. Further sensitizations to people. Posh act is not enough. It is more than posh sensitization. It is more than respect for being human, which is important. And by no means women should be underrated. They are at par. I would say, I would rather say that I never intend to be a man, it is said by somebody, because I feel I'm either equal or no less than him. So this chief people officer or the HR officer, they have to create a culture. The culture assimilation is very important wherein everybody is treated.
Right.
The third pillar, that is the individual pillar. I think all of us should have and work on shine theory as women. That theory says that if I'm a woman, I should pull the other women up. Then only the difference will be mitigated. The difference will go away probably, or the difference will not be there. Not immediately, but intermittently or in long term, it won't be there. So the shine theory is a perfect theory, and all of us should work towards that. I'm sure microaggressions and unconscious bias, they are deep-rooted in our culture and our society's upbringing also. But we should not forget that even in India, I would just take an example of India, the Atmanirbhar Bharat and the Atmanirbhar woman. I think what comes naturally to us is the brilliancy of the snake, the beauty of the peacock, and the rigorous tigress in us doesn't allow us to sit back and watch something going wrong against us or against anybody or everybody in the organization. So I'm sure if we do all these three, things will be better in the organization.
Wonderful. Very, very interesting perspective, Dr. Samta. Can I bring you in, Shashwat, and get your perspective? What do you think? Also given that you're from the manufacturing space as well, right? So, any thoughts on the, on microaggressions and biases that exist, and how maybe in your organization you've been kind of taking up to address some of these issues?
Sure. So my current organization, so I'm into the mobility sector, which is more of IT, but we work very closely with all our automotive companies across the globe. But of course, my previous formative years have been into manufacturing as well. Now, first of all, I want to begin with an acceptance that it exists. I think that's where the solution for everything begins from. So microaggression, cognitive biases, they do exist. And more or so, we believe or people claim that I'm not biased, but their subconscious biases are so strong that they fail to recognize that there's a bias lurking around that. Now, I think there are some good examples already shared. So I will probably move towards an approach or a strategy which kind of works across. So I think the solution towards what gave birth to this as a problem, I think it happened over the period of time, and it happened because of overdoing with few and doing less with the others. Now, if you're looking at, and I probably always try to look out for a solution which is just not, I mean, of course, it has to yield an outcome for the next year or the next 3 years or 5 years, but I'm someone who would always like to look at a macro trend which will shape us for the next 15 years or 20 years for that matter. Now, a solution of that nature, if you want to talk about, it has to have its basis of the same three things: celebrating the diversity, making every interaction ecosystem inclusive, and respect the equity which kind of comes across. And I want to bring in an example, and it's slightly different from the current context of women and men. I would probably bring across a simple concept of what we say as the respect of labor. Irrespective of what you do, you are respected that you are earning your livelihood. Now, if you move your mindset towards this side, then the whole concept of whether you are, which gender do you come from, which region do you come from, kind of becomes less significant towards that. So the moment you bring across an equity of performance, an equity of treatment, and an environment which is inclusive and offers psychological safety, just not for women, but for men as well, I think that's a place where things start thriving. So these biases are there. And it's my personal opinion and my view, these biases thrive more, not because someone is not going and telling them that's a bias, you should be careful about that, but they thrive more because when that bias is demonstrated, someone stops, someone just acknowledges that, or the ecosystem kind of supports it, or you just pass a small smile towards that statement, it reinforces the other person's thought. So the whole idea is let's focus upon inclusion, and inclusion along with respect for diversity and equity kind of lays a path forward for us. So that's my little overarching, and keeping in mind of whatever we do should be sustainable, should yield a better workforce for a better diverse workforce for our future. That's how I would like to put it.
Awesome. Yeah, I quite agree with you. I think we need to create that ecosystem, where women's aspirations are supported, where we challenge the status quo, where we create a more enabling, supportive environment, for women. And, I like the point that you mentioned, Dr. Samta, about assumptions, and more often than not, a lot of assumptions are even with regards to other diverse communities to say, persons with disability may not be able to travel or be in a sales job or, things like that. I think it's just very sad that, we choose to decide on behalf of the person without actually asking them, if they're even ready to, if they can even, do a certain job. So I think, and you would probably, both agree, while of course I was just got informed that Dr. Ankita is not able to make it. So I am going to ask her questions to a few here. You may agree with me that, a lack of representation of women in senior leadership role definitely affects the overall organizational culture and decision-making process, right? I think there is a level of passion, perseverance, like a certain set of qualities that women bring to the table. And not having that kind of representation or that kind of influence or power, at in the C-suite or in the board, in senior leadership positions, can definitely affect the organization. I want to maybe, ask both of you, any practices that you can share, anything tangible, and of course you spoke about that, organizations need to have a long-term plan. And I agree, but, I would like to probably, decode that, for the audience to say, what does that long-term plan really look like? Right, just by saying that we want to hire women in leadership positions and therefore this is how we're going to be going about it may be maybe the starting point. But if you can just decode that for us and maybe share any good practice, in ensuring that there is representation of women in leadership roles, one, and two is how do we then retain them? Because that's also the challenge that we're currently facing. The primary topic that we're discussing about is that women, there are not too many women in leadership roles, and women who are in these roles are somehow leaving their organizations in a very, very higher, at a very higher rate. So any thoughts here? Maybe Dr. Samta, I'll bring you in here and get your perspective on this.
Sure. Interestingly, while we are talking, the representation of women in C-suite is going high in India. It is also getting higher for the entrepreneurship role that the women are taking, and taking some feedbacks and inputs from there only. I feel rightly that women has a lot of good qualities. Not admiring myself or you, but yes, irrespective of the gender bias here, which can be unconscious though. But yes, I am sure that women comes up with a lot of dexterity, perseverance, and the best aspect that women owns and shows up is the ability to decide while she is multitasking. And that is proven ability. That is how she is neurologically built also, physiologically also built that way. So when she comes on a leadership role, she pushes the organization at a second quantum level. And not only that, the ideas that she brings forth because of the diversity and because of the varied experience she comes up with, I think those are amazing and to be well kept. Now, how organizations should groom people to C-suite? I think number one, they should attract the women talent at the younger age also. They should have established something like Hunar Se Rozgar Tak for women so that they can come. They can instill something called as purified objectives for career progression. There has to be a purified objective so that even when they have some weaknesses or some obstacles, they will not lead, those obstacles will not lead her to leave the maybe the career path. Right. So once it is done, there must be consistent effort from the organization level, from the family front also, that they should be groomed, they should be nurtured. They're already nurturing women, but they should be further nurtured so that they can develop their leadership potential. And one line I would like to say here is when women attempt to tell something, an innovative idea, a design thinking idea, a new lateral thinking idea, don't treat her to be bossy. Just rename it that you are exceptionally good at your leadership role. So these little things can be motivating spur of moment for her. The aha effects for her, and that can particularly lead an organization to a more potential growth. Now, coming again, that how do we give her a psychological safety? Very important, because women are quite aspirational these days. So is everybody. The young generation is also very aspirational. So give her enough scope so that she can develop, she can progress. It can be lateral development, it can be horizontal development, it can be through job enrichments, job enlargements, it can through leadership challenges, leadership opportunities that you can give. Give them FedEx days. 24 hours are yours. A FedEx day, 24 hours for the women, and let her come up with a plan which is actionable and which is too good for an organization, not only to sustain, but survive in future. So
Right.
I am sure that leadership roles of women in the C-suite levels can be developed. It is not a very big thing, because women have that genetic potential in her. It is only that those generational limitations should be avoided and given all the possibilities for her to fly with her wings. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Shashwat, would you want to chime in and share your perspective?
Sure. So I have a slightly different perspective out here, and aligning to most, but a little different approach, and coming in more from a business perspective. Um, More often, whenever we try and drive things only for women, it kind of singles them out. And now I'm going to quote more of empirical data based on studies. Uh, Millennials and millennials, majorly, they would not like to be called out or separated out. And they say, don't design something else for a millennial women. Say, design something for us. That may include me, my colleagues, my representative from the same kind of age bracket. So to make something more acceptable within the organization, it is important that when I will let me for a moment remove the word women and use the word talent. When a talent is promoted, they are promoted on the basis of their accomplishments and their potential. People should just read that. And the moment you design something different for a woman, they said, oh, you know what? The person got promoted because of a gender, not because of the potential and the performance. So at all the times, even for the leadership development, for mid-manager development, for the first-time managers, for early career growth, it is designed to promote talent. Now, while you are promoting talent, it is important that the pool has a reasonable mix of both the gender into it. Now, that's the supply side of it. What we can ensure that the supply is a uniform playing field, the assessment is just, the assessment is legit, and the assessment checks for potential and performance. And that the outcome which comes across is more accepted within the organization. Now, coming to this, when we say to create the source, hiring strategies broadly. I mean, how do we look out for having, depending upon the industry, you may decide whether it's a 60-40 mix, whether it's a 50-50 mix, or it could be a 30-70 mix as well in terms of I mean, right now I'm calling it out as a binary gender to men or women, but that's how it could be laid across. But again, I would like to go back to what I said earlier. For a representation to the C-suite today, or for the representation to the C-suite 15 years from now, you have to plan and work on it from today. Imagine a situation that in a C-suite there are, let's say, 11 people in the leadership, and you would like to incept or hire someone from external ecosystem and incept them into that. There is going to be a bit of I don't know, I cannot quantify, but there's going to be a difference because the ecosystem is changing. The rest of the people, let's say they are men, let's say they have been groomed within the organization or been with the peers and spent 5 years, 6 years, whatever that time period is. There's going to be a natural resistance towards a new person could come across, maybe. So hiring someone and incepting them at a particular level, before you do that, the ecosystem has to be made inclusive and make it acceptable to a different kind of perspective. I like that idea. When a person shares a thought, respect the thought, question the thought, challenge the thought, not the individual. and irrespective of which gender, how they are coming in across, focuses on the talent and the performance. And I think that kind of takes a front seat, then it's more acceptable into the organization. So that's my little tweak to Samta, what you shared in terms of my approach from a business perspective.
Interesting. I'm really enjoying this conversation, and I'm also referring to some notes that I made, and also some analysis that we've also been doing for our organization. And broadly, and also if I take my own example, even as a woman, I also feel that. And to your point somewhere, Shashwat, where you mentioned, we need to look at talent, and not, kind of creating gendered programs. However, I also do believe that sometimes we have to kind of also make a certain group more visible, because there is not enough that is being done for that group, right? Just to kind of, share my thought over there. And with this, I also want to discuss this point that maybe in an Indian context or maybe globally, I think the roles are very gendered for men and women, right? And when I talk about policies, etc., be it the maternity policy, right? Typically, I don't know, and I'm sure there are organizations, who have equal maternity and paternity policy, whereas in most organizations, a majority of organizations would typically have like the regular maternity policy as per the act, and probably 4 days, 7 days, 10 days, 1 month, 2 months at max for paternity. And since the roles are so gendered, right, and this is also something that is shared in the Women and the Workplace 2022 report that I'm, kind of also referring to, women are overworked. While there are women who make certain choices to be at home or to take up jobs, and both the choices need to be appreciated. As at the same time, aspiration also needs to be created for women who want to grow and who want to take up higher positions. But because there is, and not all women have that support system. Indra Nui talks about the support system that she was able to create. But unfortunately, that doesn't work for a majority of women, right? Not everybody can afford nannies. Not everybody, and with the nuclear family concept, increasing, especially in, tier 1 cities, it's a little difficult, right? So here, when our roles are so heavily gendered, and this is also, in my view, one of the reasons that a lot of women don't want to advance, because they're also overworked at home. And so here, I want to get your perspectives in terms of what are some of the things that organizations can do, because this is also one of the reasons why women reach a certain level. And I'm not talking abstract, I'm talking from my own experience, after having spoken with a lot of women, who are at that level, to say that, okay, beyond this, I can't do this, or, I have to take care of my parent or her in-laws or her child or whatever. I want you both to kind of, come in here and maybe share, your views. How do we kind of make that work-life integration more easier, sustainable, just so that men, are also become equal contributors when it comes to taking responsibilities of the home, right? And this is a discussion that maybe, Shashwat, we can start with you and get your perspective. I mean, if you were to have a same paternity policy, do you think, from your perspective, what do you think, would men want to kind of even take that up? Because again, there could be a lot of kind of biases that they may also face.
Brilliant, and thank you for putting it across. So interestingly, after spending 1.5 decades into the industry, I wanted to just go on a sabbatical, and the idea for sabbatical was to haven't got a break for a long time, and while it is still stereotyped that a break is what a woman takes during the life events, supporting and etc. So that's the first bias which I could say that I did it for myself, and I cannot talk more about it because I know the wonder it does to yourself, the wonder it does to one's, to the self. Now coming to the context. So first of all, paternity as a whole, as a topic, then having an equal thing. Small answer is why not? Look at a simple. I don't know. I don't have data to kind of quote across, so I'm going to make a hypothesis out here. It's a general trend to be called out that a kid is more attached to their mothers.
Yeah.
The very fact starts from the formative years out there. So
Mm.
why do I mean men have choice? Let me also say it that way.
Yeah.
If you do not have a paternity break for that long, please take your leave. Go on loss of pay if your organization can support.
Mm.
This is your investment to the formative years for a family which is going to grow here onwards. Now that's my personal view. Now the way we do it here in our organization at KPIT, we have made it more inclusive and added multiple parts. What we say that your need to take a break will be wider in terms of its application. You could be taking a break for maternity is defined, so I will exclude that for the moment.
Yeah.
You may want to take a break to be a primary caregiver to your parents, to your spouse, to your to your kids, could be to anyone. You would like to take a break to follow your passion, to go for an NGO, go out for following, get a training on painting, know how to bake a cake and etc. Whatnot for the matter. You may want to take a break. All what we are saying is you may want to. And that as a policy, which we call a sabbatical policy, is agnostic of gender. All what it says is here are our qualifying. Don't cross the line of conflict of interest. I mean, you can't take a sabbatical here and go and work for somewhere else. So with that, we make it more accessible for people who would like to take a break and support a cause, support a family, support being a primary caregiver to an individual. And we have seen extremely positive uptake of this as a policy within our organization. And again, both the genders use it equally well.
Yeah.
Now, taking that forward more in terms of so broadly that's where it kind of boils down to, and maybe I will pause and offer it to Sapta to know her perspective on this problem.
I think that is an interesting pause, Shashwat. And just on a lighter note, I'm sure that men must be cherishing when you said they should get equal paternity leaves and enjoy. But look, there are some biological sentiments which I would like to bring you. Men doesn't have to deliver a baby or carry a baby for 9 months. That is one aspect of it. While we say that, I would also like to put that yes, paternity leaves are equally important, but they have to be well-guided leaves wherein they actually bring up their kids in a way during their formative years. So the way our construct in the organization is that we sensitize the first-time mothers. We should also sensitize the would-be fathers on what to do, what not to do. It is very important. Why talking about gender again? Why talking about women again? Yes, I'm a woman. I'll stand for it. It is high time. But then men has to be sensitized on the equal rules of home and the kitchens, everything. To the contrary, what happens that we have to ask people to go on leave because they should know the art of parenting. So organizations should also, while they are doing a decent service to themselves as an organization, business profit-oriented organization, they should also take it as a CSR thing, that they should also train people on how to be very important during the formative years of their child. Again, going back to the patriarchal society, if they take care during the formative years of their child upbringing, these cognitive biases will never exist. That is very important. Second thing, that yes, people should go on leaves. It rejuvenates them, comes back. And I'm sure each one of us should either take leaves or go for sabbatical. But at the same time, I would suggest that people should also be well guarded with the concept that they are equal. If they are bread earners, both of husbands and wives are bread earners, they are also the house bringers. They have to upkeep the house together. So they have to be sensitized on that also. An organization can do that. Organization can have some trainings revolved for that. we started a concept of mentoring and counseling the women who wanted to leave because of their career challenges, not because of their career challenges all by themselves, but because those career challenges were hampering their work-life balance. And somehow they had to take care of their kids, they were doing their medical and they have to counsel them. So we told them the first counseling starts with you. And that is where counseling and mentoring for the parents started. And we see a sea change. We talk about heroes, but in our company, we also talk about sheroes, that yes, they are giving, there is a blend of people who are working together in the organization. And at the same time, they are also working with their counterparts at home. So I'm sure there should be an equal advantage given to both the genders, irrespective of the genders, but we should take some extra care for the women also, because of the complications that comes up with the bearing of a child, the pregnancy, and that cannot be subsided. That cannot be, I think we cannot ignore it. It is by default natural. It is just how do we become more sensitive towards it is the concern.
Great. Wonderful thoughts, Dr. Samta and Shashwat. Thank you for sharing. And when you were saying, I was just, reflecting that, there's this chapter in this book, Lean In, chapter 11, working together toward equality. And there is something that I would like to quote here and probably just sum up, our conversation today. While of course she's given a context around, how women, and maybe I'll read from this, that, for decades we focused on giving women the choice to work inside or outside the home. And we've celebrated the fact that women have the right to make this decision, and rightly so. But we have to ask ourselves if we have become so focused on supporting personal choices that we are failing to encourage women to aspire to leadership. I think that is where, organizations play a very important role, that unless women have supportive employers and colleagues, as well as partners, who share family responsibilities, they don't really have a real choice, right? And she goes on to say that until men are fully respected for contributing inside the home, they don't have real choice either, right? We do look down upon men to say, oh, somebody's a stay-home dad, and maybe, I don't know, I haven't really heard of too many stay-home dads, in our country, or stay-home parent, in this case. So equal opportunity is not equal unless everyone receives the encouragement that makes seizing those opportunities possible. And only then can both women and men achieve their full potential. And I think on this note, I really thank the both of you to kind of being very candid on your perspectives. It was certainly very, very invigorating to kind of, hear your thoughts on this interesting topic. Of course, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. We do know that, there needs to be certain plans. And of course, mentoring and sponsorship is very, very important. But it's also very important that there is enough hand-holding, done at women starting out their careers, because those eventually then become future leaders. I think I really enjoyed having this conversation. Thank you very much, Shashwat and Dr. Samta. We certainly missed Dr. Ankita today. I'm sure the audience listening to us, have some takeaways, and maybe at some point we can continue this conversation. Perhaps offline we can take it forward. But thank you again very much for your time. And over to you, Urvita.
Okay, thank you. So this was a very, very insightful discussion. From learning about some of the best leading practices to increasing our knowledge on this, the subject. I'm confident enough that the leaders and the students, the audiences that who have joined us today have multiple takeaways from this Charcha. So on behalf of Team IDF, I would really like to thank our speakers for their great insights and this thought-provoking discussion. I would also like to thank our audiences for keeping the session interactive and spending out time, of course, taking out time from your busy schedule and sharing your insights. So yeah, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful